Hi, my name is Michael Rhodes, and today we're talking about reacting or responding. And there's a huge difference. In one of my talks I mentioned the light self and the shadow self. And in a way this is very much following along those lines, but is talking of a way to how to always move toward the light self, because a lot of people get stuck. You know, when you've had 1,000 incarnations and you've basically been negative and in the shadows, you don't just jump out like as easy as that. It takes effort, it takes focus, it takes concentration. In fact, it takes being conscious to pull your way out of those old, deeply embedded programs. I mean, when a child is born and it's already got a shadow self program because it's just come out of a trauma and drama that is created in a previous life, which was a continuation of the one before, then you really have to realize that you don't just go and do a workshop. Okay, I've got that, and it all changes. Some people go to workshops where they learn to walk through fire, and they spend 3 hours being psyched up and they walk through fire. Literally red hot coals, and you probably know about this, without being burnt, and they do that. And that is supposed to then change their life, and every now and again for one person it does, because that was the timing, that was their moment. But for most people, 3 hours can't overturn 3,000 lifetimes, 3,000 incarnations of a fairly negative approach to life. 3 hours can't do that. It needs to be, you need to walk through those red hot coals every day. Then gradually you'll get the idea, wow, if I can do this, I can create myself a life that is totally pain-free and positive. But most people do that once. And so I'm not knocking the process, because every now and again it has an extraordinary effect on a person. But that doesn't work. Just as we have a long time to get ourselves into that negative shape, it takes a time to walk out, for most people. Sometimes there is a jumper and jump straight out, but for most people that doesn't happen. It's got to be something that is a new state of consciousness. And one of those ways is a very simple way. We react. Somebody says to us something negative, we react, and back goes a negative. That doesn't work. That maintains a shadow. That person who said something negative to you is in your moment because you're a negative person. They're not a positive person of shining their light that comes along and says something negative to you. It doesn't happen that way. They are somebody that you've attracted. This is how it works. We attract. We are the creators of our lives. I'll say it again, in every moment of your life, you are creating the content and direction of every moment of your life. Nobody can come in and unscripted say something, because you're the writer of their script, because it's your life. And so this is the way we do it. And so we react and react and react. And it does not work. React means reenactment. We're reenacting something we've already done 1,000, 1,000,000 times. And 1,000,000 times is probably not an exaggeration when you look through 1,000 incarnations and maybe 50 years of average of that. Not an exaggeration. And so we have to break this. Fear reacts. And fear to me is the mother and father of everything that's negative. Now we're not talking about the negative as something that's bad and wrong, because it isn't. It just simply does not work for making a happy, enjoyable, healthy life. It just doesn't work. But it's not bad or wrong. It just does not work. There are no rights and wrongs and good and bad. It's our thinking and our emotions that create those divisions. And so fear reacts, love responds. But here's the problem. We can subconsciously react because most people live subconsciously in that shadow state. But we can only respond from love consciously. because love is in the moment, and we have to be conscious of the moment to lovingly respond. And so that is in fact a huge, huge step. In fact, it's not a step, it's a gigantic leap to practice moving from reaction to response. You've got to also remember that in the English language, a lot of people don't know the difference. Like when I was walking through Malibu, walking past some of the mansions there with their huge gardens and their barred gates, they have on them, and notice these gates, armed response. Now that is incorrect. You can't have an armed response. What they should have had is armed reaction. You know, you come in here and invade this space, we're armed and we will react and we'll chase you and do whatever we have to. There's nothing to do with response in that. It's the wrong word. Love responds, and response comes from the moment. Fear reacts, and the reenactment comes from the past, because all fear lives in the past. You cannot have fear in the moment. You can only have it when you're not in the moment. So let's say you're in the moment. Then if you're in the moment, you're not thinking, you're experiencing. And if you're in the moment experiencing, and because you're in the moment, you will be conscious. And because you're in the moment conscious experiencing, you're not going to therefore choose fear, because you just don't do that. You're in a state of consciousness that doesn't make that choice. I don't choose fear anytime. It doesn't mean there's nothing in my life that would not give me the opportunity to choose. It's just that I would choose love. And love comes from the moment, and pretty well every time, once I've done that, there was nothing to fear anyway. I've seen its truth, and it melts like a cloud in front of the sun. It just disappears. And so, and yet dense clouds in front of the sun would tend to say to us, the sun is gone. But no, the sun is there shining. But now we're looking at the clouds. And so you focus on the sun and the clouds disappear. And that's living in a different way. That's responding to life. And so a reaction is always fear-based, and often there is aggression in it, because fear is aggressive. We've got to maintain our fear, so there's aggression. There is no aggression in love. Love is powerful. I tend to express love rather powerfully with words sometimes, but it's not aggression, it's very powerful. Love is not a wimp that sits down at the back of the hall. Love is a very powerful thing. I said to once in America, I was giving a talk, and I said, love is not for wimps, it's too powerful. And the guy afterwards came and he really got on at me. He said, that's a terrible thing to say, love is not for wimps. And I realized it didn't take long. He thought he was a bit of a wimp. And so we didn't part the best of friends, because although I told him the way it is, and that might sound arrogant, if you think that's arrogant, so be it. But although I told him the way it is and the way I saw it and what he could do with that, in his conversation to me, I realized that actually he was a wimp. And he had a partner who he tried to dominate. In fact, he did dominate. And that's the real action of a wimp, because he was afraid of her domination would be more than his. So he had to be the top dominant. And I pointed out, well, that's the action of a wimp, which he didn't like. And so we'll leave all that. Reaction maintains reaction. Responding in the moment tends to create and maintain responding in the moment. And so that is a simple way out of this. Of course, simple I say, but not necessarily easy, because you have to respond and you have to be conscious to respond. And when you have a population that Bruce Lipton considers about 94% of the population lives subconsciously, you've got to realize that about 80% of them probably live subconsciously all the time. They're in the shadow part. They have a lower calibration. and they're not easy to convince of anything. They cling to what they believe is their knowledge with a great tenacity, and they're inclined to be habit forming and to get in the groove of a habit, and it's comfortable in that habit even if it's uncomfortable. It's like the girl who has a boyfriend who beats her, but she has a boyfriend, and she'd rather have a boyfriend who beats her than appear to the others to not have a boyfriend, because she is deeply into victim consciousness. And please don't think I'm picking on women with this, because I'm not. It happens with men and their friends. When we have a victim consciousness, we attract it. Victim consciousness goes with the shadow, and it goes with reaction, and it goes with fear. They all hold hands and dance in the same sorry circle. And that doesn't make that bad or wrong, but it's a way of living that does not allow us to grow in consciousness. That's as simple as that. That's the criteria how you measure your life. Am I growing in consciousness? The way I'm thinking and expressing my emotions, does this allow me to grow in consciousness? Am I doing the same process? Am I repeating the same process that I was in 5 years ago? And if the answer is yes, then I'm not growing in consciousness. And that's okay. But if you want to grow in consciousness, one of the ways is you look at life and you look at your reactions. You observe yourself through a day. You don't judge yourself. You don't criticize yourself. You observe yourself. And you are the observer looking at the observed, which is one. And you observe yourself, and you give yourself the freedom that day to be who you are. You don't curtail your reactions. You simply look at them and think, wow, I had about 42 reactions today. So now what did I react over? And so you just look at it, a gentle analysis that has no judgment, no comparison, and no criticism. And you'll begin to see a common thread to which you reacted. And behind that common thread, you will find probably it was threatening. What does it threaten? Fear, because it doesn't threaten love. And so you can say, today I'm going to choose to respond. I'm going to consciously respond to as much as I can to everything that happens. And so the observer begins to watch you responding to life instead of reacting. And at the end of the day, you'll probably smile and say, wow, I did pretty well. Now give yourself a year, at least a year, and you will gradually have left behind probably 90% of all your reactions. And that is spiritual growth. The ability to consciously choose love.